that was a balancing act and a half. Very tricky. It's a die, of course, can be used as a die in a board game, but it's really meant to be a balancing trick, because inside is quite a heavy ball bearing, and once you've loosened it from its sweet spot, it won't balance, it'll just tip it over, however hard you try. So it's really two things in one. It's a die for playing with a board game, or it's intended to be really a very clever, difficult mechanical puzzle. We have to balance it on a very fine point. Tricky stuff. And these are all die with something curious about them. They can all be used for board games, but they're a bit tricksy. This one is perfectly straightforward. It's just the very first electronic die I've ever come across. You push the little red bar and it gives you a random reading. It gives you a 5, and every time you press it, it'll give you a random number, 6 and so on. If you wanted to be a little more sort of physical, you could pick it up and roll it about. You just have to remember that opposite the 6 is a 1, which is actually the battery compartment goes in, the batteries go in there. But it's intended really to be on the table, and every time someone's turn comes, they push that and they get a random generated number. Here's one that's, this is very tongue-in-cheek. It's an overshaken die. It looks like a regular one, but it's been somehow distorted. All the numbers are there, but they're in the wrong places. It's as if they've moved around the surface. That's supposed to be a 4, would you believe? That's supposed to be a 2. Well, it's easy to spot, but it's in the wrong place. And even the 1 is not exactly concentric anymore. And opposite that, the 6 is a complete mess. How is that 1, 2, 3, 4? Yes, you can just about make out the 6. You can't recognise them immediately because they've been overshaken. Very tongue-in-cheek. Very tongue-in-cheek. I like that, I think. Then there's a tricky one by George Sicherman, who thought up the idea of making a pair of die which would act like ordinary die, but have different numbers. With ordinary die, you can get a chance of a double 1, or you can double 6. Those are the rarest, and all the other numbers between them, like the 7 is probably the commonest, form a kind of profile of probabilities. You've got only 1 in 36 chance of getting that double 1, and likewise double 6. But he came up with these curious numbers. There's an 8 there, and there's a 6 there, and a 3 and a 1, and this has got 2 3s. And would you believe he's worked out that mathematically, if those are rolled and you add up the numbers, they give exactly the same profile of probabilities as ordinary die. 1 chance of getting double 1, 1 chance in 36 of getting double 6, and all the others with increasing probabilities up to about the 7, the 6 or 7 or 8 is the most likely. So those can be used as ordinary die in a board game. They'll give the same typical results as standard die do, Sicherman die. Here's a strange one now. It's got a 6 which says push in, and it's got something here with the pluses and minuses on it, and it's got something which says refill. What's going on here? And the clue is the 1 which says this side up, port flame. Oh yes, we're looking at a lighter. So in the smoky den where everyone's smoking and playing die, they could be using this, and at the same time they could light their cigarette with it. That's a nice idea. Also for people who like drinking with their game, this is a lovely idea. They're sort of games mugs, Las Vegas type games mugs. You can put the drink inside, but if you want to have a game of the die, it's underneath. It's in a separate compartment in the bottom, completely airtight and separated from the liquid. The trouble is, if you've got much liquid in there and you're shaking around, it's going to come spilling out. I really prefer the version with a roulette wheel, where you just do a gentle circulation like that, as if you're swirling it, and it'll give you your random reading. So this one, I suppose it'll work if you have just a very little bit of your whiskey, double whiskey in there, and then you can drink, and you can get your value of your random number. That's a very nice idea. Then there's a thing called non-transitive dice, which are very tricky and very clever, mathematical, jars probability, in which you lay them out like that in your mind's eye. 6 beats 5, beats 4, beats 3. Well, not immediately, but as you're doing a roll, and after about 10, you'll find this will beat this one about 2 times out of 3. It's just got the higher probability, the arrangement of the numbers or so. That will do the same with this one. It'll beat the 4 with the zeros in it, about 2 times out of 3. That'll beat this one 2 times out of 3, but this will beat the 6 2 times out of 3. It's not linear like this, where that beats that, beats that, beats that, so this is much higher. No, it's not like that at all. It's much subtler. It goes round in a ring. This will mostly beat this one, which will mostly beat this one, which will mostly beat this one. And you can show this very clearly with these last 2, because this is nothing but 3s all the way out round. Everybody faces a 3. This has got a 6, which obviously is the winner, and a 6, which is obviously a winner, but all the other ones are 2s. So you've got 4 2s there. That's 4 losing possibilities, and only 2 winning ones. So between those 2, you can see that's going to win 2 times out of 3, because it's got the high probability, and it's the same with the other ones, but more subtle. There's a company in Boston who makes die. Their catalogue's full of marvellous stuff, and I visit them from time to time at the New York Toy Fair. And I asked Jim, who runs the company, what's the smallest and biggest you've ever come across? Well, the smallest one he makes, this one here, would you believe, absolutely tiny. And he gave me a whole bunch of them to take home. The biggest one, he says, is probably one of these inflatable beach ball type things, which is sort of cubical, but it's got the die markings between 1 and 6 on it, and you play on the beach. That'd be about, 2 foot wide perhaps. But that's the smallest one, and that's the biggest one. And talking about a small and big die, here's quite a smallish die, but it's made of this very curious substance which will grow when you put it in water. So that's what I've done. That's what the die looks like when it comes out of the package. When it's grown, it looks like this horrible squidgy thing. Bits distorted, but it's exactly the same. It's got a whole lot of water molecules. It's inflated itself by taking in water molecules, and if I left that to dry out, it'll shrink back down to that size again. I think it'd be a bit tricky to play with that. It's distorted and it's a bit wet and horrible and slightly clammy and all the rest of it. So I'd pass that by if I'm actually having a serious game of die, because it's just a bit too quirky. Now my favourite die, I think, of the lot is this one here, which is the one that I made these up myself, but from paper. It's origami die. And these are when the finished result, which are perfectly balanced. They're just made of flimsy paper. And here's a bigger one here. And the way of making them is this extraordinary thing by a Japanese academic, Shuzo Fujimoto. This is the diagram for making them, and you can see it here on one I'm about to assemble, which has got all the pieces there from 1 to 6. There's 4, 6, 3, 1. That's bits of 5, and that's bits of 2, which is kind of... What I like about this, first of all, is when you've made it, it's actually got 2 skins, 2 layers to it, which makes it nice and firm. And secondly, it's fun to make your own die from a bit of paper. But the most interesting thing about this one is the 3rd fold in it, which I think is probably one of the most elegant folds in all origami. You take the beginning of a box there, that's the easy bit to do. Now the next fold is astonishing, which this guy invented, because as I'm folding it in a coordinated motion, this spot is going to come over to here, that's going to fold over to here, that's going to fold over here, there's a valley fold for each of them, and it all happens at the same moment of time. So let's have a go with this and see if it works. Push it in, it twists round. In one motion you've almost completed the box. There's a double skin, you've got 2 layers of the cardboard, all in one motion. You tidy it up at the bottom, which is an easy job to do. Make sure that's in. Now there's the 5. And the last bit is trivial. You merely fold it in, and fold it in, and fold it in, and fold it underneath and in. You've got a completed die. And it's strong. This is strong. It'll take a can of soup on it very happily without crushing. So that, I think, is my favourite one, because it's a DIY, well, make it yourself at home, just made from origami paper or something a bit thicker than that. It's fun to do, and you can then have a game of Ludo, whatever. Die, dice. Wonderful subject.